coffee, and fall asleep. Alright, so pick up kind of where we left off. So we got that fire starting in the scary corner there. Review a little bit, 18 inches by 18 inches, 70%, 70% more efficient burning here in the corner. 18 inches by 18 inches starts grabbing fuel horizontally. It's starting to go vertical as well. Heat's starting to build up. So we're going to talk about Charles' Law. And Charles' Law is actually really cool. Like when I finally grasped what Charles' Law was, it kind of opened my eyes a little bit to a lot of things. It was one of those like aha moments. So Charles' Law is the volume of a given gas or mass of gas directly proportional to the absolute temperature if pressure is kept constant. At every increase of 459 degrees roughly, the gas temperature, or the gas volume doubles. So as we heat that gas, the gas expands, right? And so in a fire development mindset, that's important because what's going to happen to the volume of this room? This gas is expanding. It's going to fill up the room, right? I mean, kind of no duh, right? But it's going to fill up the room. But the cool thing about Charles' Law is that Charles' Law works in reverse as well. And with our water application, with appropriate water application, we actually end up getting a gas layer that shrinks, right? So if we're cooling with our hose strings, we're cooling the gas, we end up getting that layer. It's going to shrink, which is also providing lift, right? So if I've got gas up in this upper atmosphere and it's 1,000 degrees and we got super hot gases coming down and I start hitting that with my stream and I'm using my stream, bang, and it's hitting the ceiling and it's banking out and it's creating these droplets, right? And the droplets, we'll get into this a lot tomorrow with our water application stuff, but the droplets, we have combination or smooth bore nozzles here. Typically going to be interior with a combination nozzle. So on that straight stream, even on straight stream, we're looking at droplet sizes that are very conducive to absorption or to conversion in the gas layer. Okay, and when we hit that ceiling and it breaks up, it's actually doing even more good for us as that falls back through that hot layer. That hot layer is taking it's transferring that energy to that water. That water is expanding, and we're getting steam production from hitting the actual surface. We're surface cooling, but as the droplets fall through, we're also getting contraction of gases, right? And we'll end up, if we're applying a little bit of water, we'll end up with some water on the floor. That water on the floor is actually a good thing for us. We'll talk about flashover here in a minute. But it helps prevent flashover. So our water is doing a lot for us that sometimes we don't even realize. So if I've got this gas layer and I'm inside fighting fire and I hit that thing and I cool that gas layer, I cut it in half, that 1,000 degrees down to 500, right? That gas volume is going to start shrinking, right? And that's why we'll watch a pretty cool video here. This is like it says, this is Stockton, California. These guys, they go to a lot of fires, right? And they got some pretty cool videos on the old YouTubes there.
10 inches, 9 inches, 12 inches, 2, truck 3, truck 2, battalion 2, and operator 1, district 608A Adams, flames from a structure across from 1537 Morrison. 4 units, it's a single-story residence, and it's unknown if occupants are home.
She sounds so friendly.
Yeah. Just like usual. You go full screen, Jay?
Control 2, it's a nice scene. Single story house, heavy wire joint. We'll be pulling a line. We're going to need help with water and get the second line. We're waiting for 2 off.
Different.
Obviously, not use blue card. Yeah, I'm lost now.
Somebody give me a report on the backside of this. Looks like it's going
So this thing is chugging, right? You get a good fire working in there. Kind of skip ahead because what ends up happening is their main entry point is blocked because you can tell they don't exactly keep the place up, right? And so the main entryway is blocked. They had to find, they had an exposure problem. They took care of the exposure problem first, confined the fire to the building of origin. Now they're going to go interior through the access to the truck.
You can put all lines in that division. There is no exposure problem to the south side. No exposure to the south.
So the reason we're going to watch this video is because it's going to be a great example of Charles' Law working in reverse for us. We're going to see this.
On this side, it must be over on that.
We have exhaust coming out of that door, right? It is an exhaust ring.
Yes, it is.
Now I want you to watch as he starts knocking the fire back, right? Cooling the sockets, working his way underneath. Now watch the direction of the smoke. That's cooling. See how it's not coming out? Now it's going back in. Look at the smoke following him in. Right? It was coming out, and now it's going back in the building, right? So why is that?
Could have been a ventilation somewhere else. Heard somebody on the roof.
Did you have vertical ventilation going, right? They have that gas layer shrinking, right? That box is not overwhelmed by the gas production now. They've knocked down the fire. We get Charles' Law working for us in reverse, coupled with ventilation, and we're getting that exhaust is now turned into an intake, right? We got fresh air coming in. And for those conditions on the ground, if we're trying to keep them tenable on the ground, if we're trying to keep those conditions on the ground in that survival space, that fresh air coming in, that's good for us, right? Because that person on the ground, it's about 1,200 parts per million of CO that their body can, that's fatal, okay? That's not a lot. So when we get that fresh air coming in, we cool that, we knock it back, we get some lift, right? It was just like floor to ceiling, that thing was fire blowing out, and you start knocking it down, boom, we get that gas contraction. That's Charles' Law working for us with our water application, okay? So it's not just hit it and we get a bunch of steam, right? We do get some steam when we flow water, and that's something we definitely got to be careful of, but it's not just steam, right? If we just keep drenching that thing, we keep putting water on this hot surface material that is now cooled below its combustion, or below that 451, and it's well below, and it's not pyrolyzing anymore. Okay, we're not getting that off-gassing material going, and we keep flowing water on that thing. Yeah, now we're going to start creating steam. That's bad for the environment, right? So too much water is a bad thing. But if we use the right amount of water on that fire, we get that nice lift working for us to keep that survival space, right? Couple that with ventilation, we get even more lift, okay? So I thought that was a really good example of Charles' Law there, kind of a cool little...
Jay, if I can add something
Yeah.
for these guys. Before you start opening up, have your lines in place. There wasn't much of a delay, but they're sitting out front while the fire's building up and rolling out. And there's not really an excuse for that, because depending on the size of the structure, that can be really bad. So don't start opening stuff up until you get your lines in place.
Don't open the front door, you're saying?
And depending on the conditions, but that was heavy smoke conditions in there, and I can tell you, just by opening the front door, what's going to happen. So you might as well have a line there. If it's light smoke, it's not a problem, but if you're looking at the fire behavior here, it's giving you an answer right away.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, one thing, sorry, before I forget. So Captain Gibbons pointed out one thing that I want to make sure, so, I'm talking about like learning stuff here, and I provided you, when I'm talking about checking that door for heat, I put my hand up like this, right? That's we're checking it with our back of our hand, right? We don't want to just put our hand up on that door. So if you You don't want to burn the bottom of your hand. I've actually done in North Bend. I definitely have done that a couple of times where you go to those big freaking handle things and you go up there and it's smoking hot and you're like, yeah, you know. So instead of using your elbow to pop them open. So anyways, bad visual aid on my part there, but don't want to set you guys up with that. So here's another video. This is, so this guy, Captain Corrigan, he's out of Gig Harbor. He's a local guy, and this guy is like, he's a whiz with some of the fire behavior stuff. So this guy sat on the UL technical panels, and kind of, beer is the currency of the fire service, right? So if you want to pry some information out of this guy, like you see him, I just saw him in a training last weekend, being with John Vos, we're at a hose class up in North Bend. Saw Captain Corrigan there, right? The first time I met him, and like I heard him give a class, I was like, dude, this guy, he knows some stuff, and I want what he's got, right? So give me your knowledge. Well, as part of prying that out of him, right? Make a little investment, like a $12 investment. Hey Cap, would you want to go sit down and have a beer and let me pick your brain, right? Go and buy him a couple beers, boom, information, just galore, and it's right there in front of you, and you get to interact with him, talk, you know, ask him questions. It's over a beer, right? So you've got a beer in you, so you're not afraid to ask the stupid questions, and you didn't want to like raise your hand to ask in the class. So, you know, if you see these guys out there, pick their brain, go and offer to buy them a beer and try to make their brain a little bit, okay? So this is him, and they ended up, they had an acquired structure. They ended up doing some reinforcing stuff so they could get a lot of burns out of it. But I like what he was doing with this because he was using a real building with, you know, it wasn't North Bend with the concrete and they had a pallet stack going in the middle. Like, this was, everything's combustible, right? And this hallway is going. So now you get to see Charles Law again work for us as they push this hallway. So that thing's going, obviously, right? And it's burning all the way down those walls in that hallway. I watched the gas. Pretty dramatic, right? I mean, that's like an instant. It's going out the door, and then you start hitting it, bang, 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 and then it's just, and it sucks back in, right? Now it's an intake. Fresh air is coming in behind us, and boom, Charles Law is working. We're getting some lift and survivable space, okay? Enough about Charles Law. This is our pallet stack going. So this pallet stack right here, this is simulating that fuel load, right? So now we're at this point. Our standard time temperature test is telling us that at 5 minutes with this fire, we're getting 1,000 degrees at the ceiling, right? 1,000 degrees at the ceiling. So it's now hit the ceiling. We're going to call, did you guys hear this referred to as a plume flame up at the academy, okay? So you're still using that terminology. So we've got our plume flame is now hitting that ceiling, and it's going to start bending. And where is it going to bend to?
Low pressure walls.
Low pressure. Okay, so it's going to start bending towards the low pressure, the oxygen, right? You hear the weather people in the morning. They're talking about high and low pressure zones and stuff like that. Fire is the same thing. Fire is a pressure event, and that fire, as it builds, it needs oxygen, so it's going to seek oxygen, and it's going to that pressure is going to seek low pressure. So if I pop that window right there, it's going to want to go out that window, right? Path of least resistance. So when Chief is talking about that door being open, the truck forced that door, they left the door open before the line got stretched around back, right? They didn't force the door and then close it down on the Halligan bar and maintain control of that door. So what Chief was talking about, now what's going to happen logically by forcing that door?
Fire out.
Right.
It's lower pressure.
I created a lower pressure, right? Boom, fire, come here, come here, come here. Okay, and that thing's gonna start working its way towards you, right? Or it's going to lean out, because that fire, when it was originally, when it showed up, that was a rich fire, right? It was a vent control, it was chugging smoke, so it had the heat, it had the fuel, right? And now we're creating a low pressure, and we're going to lean it out, okay? We're going to talk about gas here a little bit, in just a second, but just keep that in mind. So this picture right here, we're talking about smoke. In the beginning stages of fire, we're going to have laminar smoke, okay? And this section right here, this is laminar smoke, and you guys have all seen it before. It builds up at the top. Like I said, it takes the shape of the box, right? And it's going to start seeking those low pressure openings and working towards them. And you're going to get that laminar kind of just nice, like if you're OCD, laminar smoke is for you, right? Laminar smoke is just kind of whoop, nice and everything looks beautiful. It's not turbulent, and it's all organized, right? So that laminar smoke, it's going to start building up along the top of the box. It's going to work its way out. Now we have here. So right here we got the door. You got the threshold of the door here, right? So it's going to hit, it's going to come down, and it's going to work its way underneath the door frame, right? So if there's any obstructions, it's still going to bank down and underneath those. But that's why when you guys are burning and stuff, pay attention as you walk through doors, right? You'll go from like, it's warm, to like, oh, that's an increase in temperature because I dropped that ceiling height, and that heat is building up and it's working its way underneath, right? So it actually is going to push it down a little bit under the door frame there. And I can't draw 3D. I have no clue how to draw 3D, so this room is going to be 2D for you guys. But we get that laminar smoke, and this room is going to be, or fire in a box is going to be constantly trying to find its state of balance, right? And we're going to talk about how oxygen and all those kind of things affect the balance. So if you guys have this, if you guys are like visual, I talk in a lot of metaphors and use word pictures and stuff. So one of the things that I like to think of is a fire is like this juggler, right? And the fire is always trying to juggle. He's got like 3 or 4 balls. He's just sitting there juggling, right? So as he's juggling, and that's the fire. It's going. Everything's all nice and good. And we come, and it starts banking down, and that juggler is kind of starting to go like this, right? Because he doesn't have room now. He can't just throw the balls way up there. Okay? It's starting to come down. Boom, 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 boom. But he's going to get to this point where it's really hard to juggle, right? And if our goal as a nozzle crew should be to keep that juggler juggling, right? Because juggling means we have survivable space, we've got intake coming in, we've got exhaust going out, the room is in balance, right? We've got thermal balance, so our juggler, as long as we've got thermal balance, he's juggling. So as that box starts to compress, he's going to start boom, 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 right? It's going to get harder for him to juggle, right? And if I make the wrong fire attack, right, or I use too much water, or I use ventilation inappropriately, the juggler is going to not be able to juggle anymore. He's not going to have the space. He's going to drop the balls. Okay, so we're going to use the juggler analogy a little bit going forward here. Turbulent smoke. So as that juggler starts going down, right, down, we're going to get turbulent smoke. That laminar smoke is going to continue until that ceiling, right, because that ceiling is being heated. Okay, so you guys know what pyrolysis is, right? So what is pyrolysis?
Getting to like a vapor state.
It's getting to a vapor state, right? So solid fuels have to be converted to a gas to burn. So if you look at when I went to University of Skagit, right, the extent of my fire behavior class was the teacher at the time took a match, or a candle, I mean, he lit this candle, and he had us hold this wire mesh over it so you can see that a flame is hollow. And he's like, that's fire, boom, college fire behavior, right? Like, whoa. And so another thing that he did, another thing that he did with this is that he kind of showed us he'd have us hold a piece of OSB or something like that over the candle, and you'd watch that phase conversion happen, like as you lower and raise the piece of OSB. As it gets hotter, you get more phase conversion, it turns to gas, right? And so that is what is burning, and we take little microscopes and or little magnifying glasses and look at it and see, okay, it's not literally this table is burning, that table is being heated to a point where it starts to turn into a gas, and that gas burns, okay? So all this up here is being turned to, it's being converted to a gas by heating, right? We got 1,000 degrees at the ceiling, rolling across, and now once that starts giving up, once it starts pyrolyzing, it starts giving it up because it's absorbed all the energy that it can. Now it's going to start reflecting it back, and that energy is going to make turbulent smoke, right? That's where we get that pressure from. So now we got smoke that looks more like this, okay? So we got laminar smoke is early stages. Turbulent smoke is going to be, okay, that fire is progressing. So when you show up, you're the pipeman, you show up and you see, I have, it's a kitchen fire, right? Report a kitchen fire, boom, and I've got laminar smoke coming out of the doorway there. And I'm looking at that thing. Is that something that I'm expecting to be a big raging fire when I go in there? Got laminar smoke from the doorway? No, right? I'm expecting that thing to be, food on the stove or something, right? Or like food on the stove extended a little bit. So if I've got turbulent smoke, I'm looking at turbulent smoke, what does that tell me about the box?
It's pretty small.
It's telling me that the box has started to absorb energy and it's starting to reflect it back, right? That ceiling temperature has gotten to the point where it's starting to reflect that energy back. It's creating that turbulent smoke. Okay, so my upper atmosphere is going to be hot, right? So I'm probably going to need to flow some water on the way in, vent and cool on the way in, okay? All right, so flow path, buzzwords for flow path, you hear that a lot. And flow path, it's kind of cool watching the progression, where you see like some of the salty guys have been around a long time, and they've seen the fire service go in like cycle after cycle where they like get fascinated with something and then like keep forever going back to like the way they've kind of been putting fire out for a while. I haven't been in the fire service that long, so like I haven't seen all these cycles, but I listen to the guys who've been around for a while, and they're like, yeah, this will blow over, give it a year or something, right? So with flow path, UL and NIST, they went in, they do all these studies and stuff, they come out with these on their executive summaries. Okay, flow path, flow path, flow path. There's this guy named James Braidwood, and I think he was in the London Fire Brigade back in like the 1800s, and he wrote about flow path. Okay, and he was like the dude that wrote the book on flow path. So now you've got all these guys going out and teaching on the national circuit, and they're out there making all this money, right? And they're using these terms of flow path and all this kind of stuff, right? Everyone's like, oh my gosh, you're the best. Well, James Braidwood was talking about flow path back in 1820 something. Okay, so flow path it's nothing new, right? It's just a new term, and flow path it's the direction of fire travel and air travel, right? Or air track. You get intake and you get exhaust. We already talked about that. It's high pressure, low pressure, that fire finding its state of balance. Okay, and that corridor, if I've got the flow path, right? The flow path is the direction that balance is taking place. So look at either bidirectional or unidirectional. Okay, and this is kind of cool little trick here. So with a bidirectional flow path, I have intake coming in the bottom and exhaust coming out the top. In a unidirectional flow path, I have exhaust. Okay, or maybe it's an intake, but either way, it's going one way, right? So if I have a fire and that thing is flashed over, it has to have an intake somewhere. So if I'm looking at this room right here, and this is the only window in this room, and that is an exhaust right there, what does that tell me about the interior door of that box? it's open, right? That should be setting off an alarm in my head. Oh, that interior door is open. Because if it's an exhaust, that window's an exhaust, boom, 100% exhaust, it has to be getting the intake from somewhere, right? So it's probably getting it from that interior door there, okay? So if I have a bi-directional flow path like that, I've got an intake coming in the windows, that room is flashed over, I've got an intake coming in the bottom of the windows, exhaust coming out the top. Is there a higher likelihood, yes or no, that the door is closed? Yes, right? Or else I would end up with that kind of fireball, you might end up with exhaust coming out those windows, almost exclusively, right? So it's not 100%, but that should be, when you're looking at, like when I go back to that first picture of, you know, J.J. Watt helping me stretch the hose line there on that fire, and I've got that, you know, window, right? And sure thing, get up to the top of the stairs and the door's open, right? Because that window was all exhaust. And when I was pulling that hose line to the forward, I was looking at that and I was like, oh, boom, bing, 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 right? Fall back to your lowest common denominator training, which this is my lowest common denominator when it comes to this stuff. I look at that and go, boom, interior door's open. Right, so that can dictate some of your choices that you make as far as water application. It doesn't have to be a window too, that's any opening. Okay, here's your breaking it down, overpressure exhaust. We've got a neutral zone, right? And that neutral zone right there, that's the juggler. You can only go to that neutral zone, right? So as that level drops and drops and drops and drops and drops and drops, right? That juggler is going to get harder and harder and harder for him to juggle. Okay, and that intake, sometimes that intake is very, very, very small. Okay, but if we're going to keep survivable space in there, we want to try to keep that intake the best we can, and we can affect that neutral zone or neutral plane, right? How can we affect the level of that? By venting or not venting, right? Ventilation or anti-ventilation. My chief was talking about closing the door, right? That's a form of anti-ventilation, okay? And that's, if we're a truck company, we don't have a hose line, right? Anti-ventilation is our friend. If we're an engine company, we've got a hose line there, ventilation is our friend. Because if we're going to go in the box with that fire, we want space, right? We don't want to fight that fire with, you know, just get beat up and get hammered. We want that space. Okay? So here's a tick. Here's a thermal imaging camera of that neutral plane inside, right? Pretty visible neutral plane. We've got smoke coming out, kind of, it's laminar, it's right on that verge of turning to turbulent smoke, right? That box is starting to give that energy back up. Okay? You see a cold spot down low, and that's all survivable space right there. Okay? The fire's bending across the ceiling. Okay? Just like we're talking about here, so here. Alright, so that turbulent smoke, we're going to start having that turbulent smoke build up. Where's my black head? Okay, and you guys can see on your fire behavior sheet there. So that was pretty cool. I didn't know until this morning that so Tran took Captain Tanaka's drawings. I don't know how you did that with them. You computerized them. Had a lot of time. So he turned them, he cleaned them up, and I mean they look awesome. So you guys can kind of follow along this progression here. So now we have a smoke. It's taking the shape of the box. It's seeking that low pressure. It's heading out. So that smoke is mainly CO. Okay, and that CO has ignition temperature of 1128 degrees. Okay, so that we've got 1,000 degrees at the ceiling. That smoke is starting to get turbulent. It's heading out there. The plume flame is hitting this, and when it hits the ceiling, there's a cool trick, right? The plume flame is hitting the ceiling, and it can only bend 1.5 times the height of the ceiling. Okay? So if I'm making an attack on this fire, and I've got that fire coming out the doorway, it's a shielded fire, right? We'll talk about shielded fire tomorrow. So it's a shielded fire, the seat is around the corner and I can't see it. And I open up my nozzle and I knock back that rollover that's happening, okay? That gas that's coming out over the top. And I hit that, boom, and I knock back the gas flame and I see, when I shut down the nozzle, I see that plume flame come right back, right? What is that telling me about the location of the seat of the fire?
Here's the use for this could is 12 feet.
Yeah, I'm like within, 15-ish feet, right? So I'm using the reach of my stream, so I know if I hit it based on the way that it reacts when I shut down the nozzle, right? Because plume flame, it's not going to go out until I put out what is burning, right? So whatever's burning in there, that fuel load, it's creating that plume flame. So it's not going to go out until I get water on the seat. Okay? So if I have that stuff coming out and I knock back that gas flame, I can go in, I can, with certainty, know, oh, this is going to be a pretty short push right into that room. Right? It's there. Or if I've got 2 doors, right? I've got 2 doorways, I've got fire in the, all I know is that there's just fire in this entryway here, right? Boom, okay, that's my door because I saw the plume flame come back, right? And I'm within reach, okay? So here we've got some turbulent smoke, a couple of good pictures of turbulent smoke there. See this brown color here? This is pretty, Dave Dodson, the guy does the art reading smoke classes and stuff like that, right? He's one of the big names in the fire service. Talks about, brown smoke meaning, structural members. If it's a wood frame, like, type 3, like that. It's got a wooden combustible interior. We've got structural members that are being burned. We've got that brown smoke showing, right? Here we've got a shop. Right, out in Houston, these dudes are out in Houston. Who knows what's in that shop, right? And they got just thick, black, nasty smoke chugging out at them, right? So, color smoke, if we can see the color, it kind of helps us build our decision-making process, but color is not as important as pressure and volume, right? Velocity and volume. That's what we're mainly concerned with. So this right here, this fire right here on the side, is coming out and it's going straight up, right? Is that pretty warm smoke? We agree that that's probably pretty warm smoke, right? The cooler the smoke gets, we get that intake, or it starts getting lazier, it's going to come out, it's not going to rise as fast. We got smoke just kind of rolling out of that thing, it's heading straight up, and obviously it's a still picture, so it's kind of hard to see. Now, things that can affect that, wind will affect that, right? Wind-driven fires, that'll affect it, but that's kind of building that RPD there of smoke and velocity. So it's rolling across the ceiling, that plume flame is rolling, the temperature's building up. Now this OSB is set up pretty good distance away from the seat there, and it's burning. So why is that? It was preheated, right? That flame, that plume flame, that's not touching, right? That's not conduction. What is hitting that? Convection, radiation, but mainly convection, right? Boom. So that's what we get. That's what's happening across the ceiling. All that stuff's being heated up, and it's going to start giving off that energy and coming back. So that rollover is occurring at a rate of about 6 to 12 inches per second. Okay, that's our flame spread. Flashover, when we get to flashover, it's about 30 feet per second. So flashover is rapid, right? CO ignition temperature is 1128 degrees. The flammable range is 12.5 to 74%. Okay? So that flammable range, that is a really broad flammable range. And why that matters to us is because when we're looking at a fire, we're looking at this hot smoke coming out. We know that CO's ignition temperature is 1128 degrees. I know that standard time temperature test tells me that 1,000 degrees is going to happen at the ceiling in 5 minutes. I'm showing up late to the party because I'm on a fire engine. So it's definitely, you know, it's probably 1,000 degrees plus at the ceiling, right? If I've got a good volume of smoke pushing out, it definitely is. So I've got the parameters, I've got the heat, I've got the smoke, right? Now what do I need? Oxygen. Right? So I've got the heat, I've got the fuel, I need oxygen, and this fire needs oxygen to light off. And if I want to protect myself from that 40% of light source energy, that radiation, I need to protect myself from that lighting off. So if it is not lit off, it's hot and it's smoke, that's telling me that it is somewhere either below 12.5% or above 74%, right? So it's either too rich or it's too lean to burn. Chances are is it's too rich, right? That's what happens most for us, it's too rich, there's too much smoke, okay? Too much up there. So if I open that door and that thing is hot, it's got smoke, what am I expecting to happen? It'll light off, right? And why does it light off? Because I lean it out. Perfect. Okay. So you see, if you like when a truck company cuts a ventilation opening in a roof, right? They cut that hole and boom, they louver it, knock it through, and you see a bunch of smoke burp out, right? It's 30 feet in the sky, and then all of a sudden you see maybe 6 feet above the hole, you see flames. Okay, why is that?
Because that's where it's leaning up.
Perfect. There you go. So that's where it's lean enough, right? It's too rich down by the hole, all that stuff coming out. There's plenty of heat, plenty of fuel, but it's too rich. Okay, so where it leans out, where it's that oxygen has diluted it enough, now it is within that 12.5 to 74%, and you can get flaming combustion. Okay, so that's important to us because it being such a broad range, that means that it's really easy for us to affect it negatively and end up getting that thing to light off. Okay, when that fuel, when that smoke lights off, it's giving us 300 BTUs per cubic foot of smoke. Okay, then back into that box. So we're talking right now, say when we're on the upper edge, probably this far, so we're at 24,000 BTU per pound. We're going to talk about the fuel load here in a second. So per pound, and now we're adding 323 BTUs per cubic foot of smoke when that is lit off. Okay, so we're adding a ton more energy back into the box, right? Which is where we are, or where that life could be. Okay. So this is, here's your, let me get back this up real quick. So this is a good video of that smoke as it's coming down the hallway and it's leaning out and it's going to start lighting off. You're going to see it travel along this hallway here, okay? This is a pretty good little example here.
There we go, he's rolling down. There you go. Hey! Let it go,
So I mean, it's pretty good volume of fire, right? That's a real building, real hallway, real room, shielded fire, all that kind of stuff, right? Stuff we're going to talk about a lot tomorrow. But you can watch as the speed that smoke is traveling with. As it comes out, the doors open behind them, right? You see a little bit of light. You can kind of see a couple of firefighters there, and it allows it to lean out, and boom, you get that travel, right? That rollover starts traveling, and it's lighting off. Okay, so is it possible for you to be in that environment right there, with the nozzle in your hand, crawling down that hallway, and have fire over your head and not know it? Yeah. Absolutely, right? And this is why, going back to the LODDs, that's why I put that in there, because that's why guys get killed in flashover in residential structures, because we're crawling in and we're not ventilating and cooling appropriately or adequately, right? We're we're bellying in, and we're waiting until we get to the seat. And it's not so much a big deal around here. You don't see it necessarily on the West Coast that much, but on the East Coast especially, you see these guys, and they belly in because they were drilled in rookie school. Don't hit the fire until you see the seat. Don't hit the fire until you see the seat, right? And this young guy like me is crawling in there. I'm like, okay, and you're just getting beat, right? Oh, it's hot, it's hot, it's hot. And the guy behind you's yelling, that's normal, right? And then you, boom, it lights off, right? Somebody, either the window fails or something happens on the, maybe on the backside of the fire, somebody opens something up, and all of a sudden I'm in this soup, right, that is just outside that flammable range, and boom, it lights off. And now I go from 40% of that energy being transferred to me to 100% because I'm in it. Okay, so we got to be really careful about that, right? You can have that fire above your head and not know it. Ventilation controlled fire. So ventilation controlled fires, like I said, it's got the fuel, it's got the heat. Now it needs that oxygen. They transition to flashover quick, and the big takeaway home, big take home with this is it's a cubic foot fire, right? It's a three-dimensional. This box, it's not vertical. It's all around us. You're in the possible fire, right? So our fire attack needs to reflect that. We need to deal with the heated gases on our way to the seat. Okay. So Thornton's rule. This is another law here. So Thornton's rule is the heat release rate of a substance is controlled by the intake of oxygen. So it's proportionate to the intake of oxygen, right? So we talk about that 8,000 to 24,000 BTU per pound fire, right? Which is a measure of the heat release rate. It's a rate of energy, right? That heat release rate of that fire is going to be governed by the amount of oxygen that fire is taking in. So if I have an upholstered couch that is made of, like, it's a modern, it's a 2016, right? Boom, it's right here in the corner, and then I take that same size couch, but it's one from the 30s or whatever, right? It's cellulose based. Okay, and those two, I get those two environments, and I put them in the same size box with a choke down ventilation opening. Are they going to burn at the same speed? So Thornton tells us that they are going to burn at the same rate until they're given oxygen, or until they're given that ordinary development, which is 10 to 15% ventilation ratio to the square footage of fire. Okay, so if I keep it choked down and I'm below that 10%, they're going to burn at the same rate. Once I give them 10 to 15 plus, right, I start opening things up, or I give them that box, that opening, now which one's going to burn faster?
Modern.
Huh? Modern one. Yeah. So, when I was sitting down with Captain Corrigan, right, we got a couple beers, and we're sitting there talking about this. And, that was one of my first questions was, Cap,